Now we're recording. Okay. So as I said, I was given the name Shanti Keshavi Devi Dasi. I am a Hare Krishna devotee. Are you guys familiar with the Hare Krishnas? That's usually the first question I like to ask people. Any? Somewhat? A little bit? Yeah, a little bit? You know, most people know the shaved heads and the saffron robes and lots of dancing and chanting. And yeah, we are that, but there's a lot more to it. There's a lot of people who think that, this was just some kind of a weird cultish thing that started up in the 60s. And actually it's based on the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, which is a big, long, illustrious way of saying it's based on a very ancient spiritual path. It goes back many, many, many thousands of years. And it just happened to be brought over here in the 1960s to knowledge because nobody had ever heard of it by a gentleman named Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Prabhupada. And Prabhupada brought the knowledge from India. He was 69 years old when he came over here. Never had been to America before. He landed in Boston in late September, early October. So you can imagine, you've got this Swami dressed in the traditional Indian clothing coming into an October in New England. He had a little drum, he had some books that he was translating, he had a pair of kartals, which were the little, I'm getting direction here. He had a pair of kartals, which are little hand cymbals, and he had the equivalent of about $7 in cash. And he came to this country, 69 years old, and didn't know anybody. He had made arrangements to stay with a family in Pennsylvania for a little while, but he made his way to New York, and he found his way to a tree in Tompkins Square Park, which is still there. It's actually cordoned off now. They have it like a fence around it, and it's called the Hare Krishna tree. Because he sat down at that tree, he started chanting the Maha Mantra. If you've ever heard George Harrison's My Sweet Lord, you've heard the Maha Mantra at the end of it. And that's really how this all started. People started coming up saying, who's the weird dude? And it turned into ISKCON, which is the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. So that's kind of how we got here. I want to go over a couple of terms that I'm going to say because you may not know them. You'll hear me talk about Krishna. Do we all know, everybody know who Krishna is? Oh, and let me just stop for a moment. I want to do a disclaimer right up front. I'm not trying to change anybody's views. I'm not trying to make anybody a Hare Krishna devotee. If you have no spiritual beliefs whatsoever, I respect that. I'm just presenting my understanding from the Vedic culture. So everything that I say is based on the Vedas. I'm not going to argue with anybody. I'm just going to present it, okay? And you can take it or leave it or ask questions. I'm more than happy to try to answer those. So, with that being said, does anybody know or has anybody heard of Krishna? I know you have. Okay. Okay, yeah. So, Krishna, you understand as?
I want to say, if I'm remembering correctly, that he is one of the principal deities in the Vedic pantheon.
Okay.
In the ancient Indian pantheon.
Okay, good. Krishna actually, per the Vedas, is the supreme personality of Godhead, God, the Creator. And, again, Krishna consciousness is different from Hinduism. Hinduism is polytheistic. There are so many, many gods that are worshipped, Vishnu and Shiva and Durga and so many others. Krishna consciousness is monotheistic, Krishna being the supreme. Everybody else emanates from him. He is the creator. So that's no different than Christianity. That's no different than Judaism or Muslim, Islam, anything like that. That's the same. There's one creator. By definition, there can only be one creator. Otherwise, it gets kind of messy. Has anybody ever heard of Radharani? No. Okay. A couple of people have. Radharani is very, very interesting. When I first went to the Atlanta Temple in 1987, I saw the deities for the first time, and to give you a little background on me, I was raised in a Lutheran church. So I go to this Hare Krishna place. I was scared to death, actually, the first time I went, because I had heard, cult, brainwashing. And I remember when I finally got the nerve to drive down on a Tuesday, I drove past the temple back and forth like 6 times. And I finally turned into the driveway. And there was this devotee sitting there with shaved head, the robes on, and I'm like, oh man, what am I doing? So, and this was long before my transition, so I was still in Steve mode at the time, okay? I stopped, I went in, he was very gracious, his name was Soma Krishna. And he took me inside, they had a guest room, and he sits me down, and I'm there. And within about 5 minutes, this female devotee comes walking through. And have you ever seen anybody and you look in their eyes, you make eye contact, and there's an immediate connection? I had that with this person. She went through the room, she came back about 5 minutes later, sat down, and started explaining Krishna consciousness to me. Her name was Dira Devi Dasi. And when she started speaking about Krishna consciousness, everything just started opening up to me, because all my life, I knew I was transsexual all my life. I didn't know why. I couldn't get any answers. The Bible doesn't tell me anything about it. Got nothing against the Bible. It's a wonderful book. But I couldn't get any answers from people. You get a lot in Christianity, you get a lot of, well, it's God's will. Yeah, okay, but I need more. When I started hearing about reincarnation and karma, I was like, oh my God. So for me, that made sense. I'm in this situation, transsexual, because of deeds that I've done in other lives. And this happens to be the life that I have now. Karma means, very simply put, for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. So for whatever you do, things will come back. If they're good, good things will happen to you. If they're bad, bad things will happen to you. And there's a multitude. In the Vedas, we're taught there's 8,400,000 species of life. 400,000 of them are human species. Doesn't mean just on this planet, because per the Vedas, there's life on every planet. This is not the only solar system. There are billions of universes out there. Carl Sagan, billions and billions. But there are billions of universes with life on every planet. So 400,000 species of life. We believe that there's life on the sun. You say, there can't be life on the sun. It's 1 billion degrees. Well, we're not talking bodies like this, but we're talking, what about, if God is all-powerful, why can't he make a body suitable to live on the sun? Well, he can. If there is God and if he is all-powerful, he can do whatever he wants. So, hearing about Krishna consciousness and hearing from Dira, it really piqued my interest, obviously. So, my God, now I can understand why I am the way I am. Because I never got mad at God. I've always been a spiritual person, always. I never got mad at God, but I always wondered, why? What did I do? I was a good kid, I didn't screw up too bad. What did I do? Well, it didn't necessarily have anything to do with this life. Past lives, karma that follows you. And we have to deal with it. I've always used the expression, it's kind of like a card game, even though we don't gamble, but you're dealt a hand. You get the cards and you got to make the best hand you can out of what you're dealt. And that's kind of all of us, you got to do the best that you can with what you're dealt, because that's your karma. So, with that being said, I was getting to Radharani, and I'm really bad about tangenting, so if you notice that, just kind of lasso me back, okay? When I saw the deities in Atlanta for the very first time, I didn't know, I saw that there were these deities over on this side, and they look like really, really weird. And then there's these deities in the middle, and they're gold. And then there's these deities on the right, there's 3 altars. And on the right, there's this beautiful black figure. And that's Krishna in his original form. And next to Krishna is the most beautiful woman that I've ever seen. In my eyes, I was just drawn to her immediately. And that was Srimati Radharani. And I was like, well, who is Radharani? And so it was explained to me about Radharani. She's very, very special. And not too many people know about her, because she's not mentioned in the Vedas directly too much. Indirectly, yes, she's mentioned, but you got to kind of know how to look. Krishna, being God, being the supreme creator, is full of every opulence that you could ever possibly want. And he's perfectly happy. He's self-contained. He's perfectly happy. But at one point he decided, when I'm doing these activities, it'd be kind of cool to have someone to do them with. So he manifested his, what's known as the internal potency, the pleasure potency, into this amazingly beautiful woman. So per the Vedas, we know that God is both male and female. That was really cool to learn. Radharani is Krishna's pleasure potency. She is the one who is able to give pleasure to him, make him happy. Even though he's the creator, he created this separate manifestation who acts independently of him, but they're always together, and they're always doing these wonderful pastimes. And she's just amazingly beautiful. I'll pass around the picture so you can actually see Krishna and Radharani from the Atlanta temple. Krishna on the left and Radharani is on the right. So, finding out that, wow, you're telling me that God is both male and female? That was pretty cool to learn. And I've always had this great affinity for Srimati Radharani. So, when you delve in a bit deeper to the Vedas, you find that there are other examples of transgender in the Vedas, which was completely, that was news to me. I was like, really? We're represented? Really? There's actually holy scriptures that actually talk about us? And yeah, there are. One of the books that we use as one of the primary sources, there are basically two, there are an awful lot, but the Bhagavad Gita, if you've ever heard of the Bhagavad Gita, and the Srimad Bhagavatam. Bhagavatam is encyclopedic. I mean, it's 13 cantos, and it'll take a long time to read. The Bhagavad Gita is a little more condensed. It's one book, and it is Krishna speaking to his cousin Arjuna. There was a great battle 5,000 years ago in India called the Battle of Kurukshetra. Historical fact, you can look it up. And many, 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 many millions of people died in this battle. And to make it really simple, there were two sides. It was kind of a civil war. It was family versus family. And because the Pandavas were being cheated out of their rightful throne, and so there was this big battle going on. And Krishna was there. He was on the earth 5,000 years ago. Again, this is per the Vedic scriptures. We know that God was actually here on the earth 5,000 years ago. A little more than 5,000. He was Arjuna's cousin. And actually in the battle, Arjuna was leading the one side against the other. Krishna was his chariot driver. Krishna was being very humble, being a chariot driver. And during this battle, Arjuna really didn't want to fight, because he's like, how can I kill my family? How can I kill my grandfather? And the person who taught me to be such a great warrior is on the other side. How can I kill this person? And that's what the whole Bhagavad Gita is about. It's Krishna speaking to Arjuna to convince him. He explains Krishna consciousness to him, that everything is under my direction. I want you to fight. This is my will for you to do. And at one point, and finally Arjuna does, and everything works out the way it's supposed to work out, because of course Krishna was behind it all. Anyway, I wanted to give that background because Arjuna was very, very close to Krishna. They were wonderful, wonderful friends. And one of the examples that's given in the Vedas is Krishna, when he was here on the earth in Vrindavan. We call them pastimes, when he would do activities. when he took the appearance of a child. You never say he was born, because God can't be born. He appeared, okay? And he was a child, and he grew up, and he had these wonderful pastimes. He was a cowherd boy, which one reason why don't you eat meat? Well, because God loves cows, and we don't eat them. So he would have his cowherd boyfriends, and they would be tending to the cows all day and playing and just having a great time. And then there were these girls who were known as the gopis. They were the cowherd girls. And Srimati Radharani, because again, Krishna never goes anywhere without Radharani, she was also here on the earth with him. And she was kind of like the leader of the gopis. She was like the head gopi. And they had these wonderful, wonderful pastimes here. And Arjuna, at one point, after they were, quote unquote, well, they were grown, was talking to Krishna. And he's like, Krishna, I really want to understand what you do, when you're with the gopis and you guys are having fun and enjoying. I want to understand that. I want to know what that's like. And Krishna does many different pastimes. Some he does with his boy cowherd friends. Some he does just with the girls. It depends on what mood he's in, what he wants to do. And he says, I want to know what they wear. I think he had all these questions for Krishna. And Krishna is like, oh, my dear Arjuna. He's like, don't you know that, when I'm with my gopis, that's my time with them to have our pastimes, just like we have our pastimes when I'm with you and the cowherd boys. And Arjuna was just so determined. He really wanted that experience. But he couldn't, because those were reserved just for the females. So actually, Arjuna was given some instructions by Krishna. You should go and see this person over here. Go to this lake, and she's going to tell you to take a bath in the lake. Just do what she says. Anyway, he goes through all of these things, does everything that the lady says for him to do, and he comes out of the water one time, and he wasn't Arjuna anymore. He was this beautiful, beautiful woman. So he then actually got to go with the gopis and he didn't remember his Arjuna identity. It was like wiped from him. But as this beautiful woman who came to be known as Arjuni, again, Keshava and Keshavi, I was telling you about my name, I'll explain that to everybody in a minute. He was the female version, and he got to do all these pastimes with Krishna, and he got to experience that. And then finally, when he was turned back into Arjuna, then he was able to understand. But it was really cool. It's like, wow, Arjuna, this great warrior. And Arjuna was like the greatest warrior, bow and arrow. He was just unbelievable. Turned into a woman so that he could experience these special pastimes with Krishna. And I thought that was just really, really cool, especially the fact that they were cousins. And Krishna tried to talk him out of it, but he was just so determined that Krishna, being so merciful, said, okay, well, if you're going to do it, you got to be a woman. So he turned him into a woman. There's another example of Krishna himself turning himself into a form. And we're not talking about Radharani, because Radharani's already manifested and she's a separate being, okay? But at one point there's a pastime where there were these demons and they stole this nectar from the demigods. Does everybody know demigods and that term and what that means? They work for Krishna. Because Krishna is having pastimes in the spiritual world. So he has 33 million, this is per the Vedas again, 33 million demigods who handle all the things that need to be handled. One that causes it to rain, one that causes the sun to come out, how hot it is, how cold it is, our hair to grow, our eyes to blink. All these demigods who do different things. Because think about it, we never think about blinking. Why does that happen? We don't even think about it. Well, there's a demigod that takes care of that for us. Pretty nice. So Krishna found out about these demons stealing this nectar from the demigods. And he's like, I need to kind of teach them a lesson. So he turned himself into this beautiful, beautiful woman. I mean, if you can imagine. Radharani is amazing. Well, this woman was just as amazing because, again, it was Krishna. So, and it was called the Mohini Murti incarnation. And Mohini was so beautiful that when she comes down, the demons who are like drinking this nectar they had stolen from them, they all of a sudden become Homer Simpson, oh, they're just like drooling all over her, and she's dancing and she's kind of leading them away, and they totally forget about the nectar, and of course she then grabs it, runs away. They can't catch her because, again, it's Krishna, and she gives it back to the demons, or I'm sorry, gives it back to the demigods so that they have their nectar again. Well, Shiva, Lord Shiva, who's one of the demigods, and in fact, he's considered one of the greatest devotees of Krishna that there is. He heard about this, and he and his wife, he's there with his wife, and he's like, I need to see this form of Krishna. He says, I need to see how could the demons be swayed like this? He can't do that to me. And so he goes to Krishna and he tells him, it's like, I would like to see this form of yours. I hear about this Mohini form. I want to see this. And Krishna said basically, are you sure? And she was like, yeah, I really want to see it. Okay. Well, Krishna does it and appears. And actually, Krishna disappeared. And then a little bit later on, Shiva sees this amazingly beautiful woman in the forest. It was just perfect form. The hips, everything was perfect. And Shiva, right there with his wife, just like totally forgets about his wife and just starts chasing after this incredible, beautiful woman. I mean, that's how incredibly beautiful. And Shiva is like this major, major demigod. Just, right up there. Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, right below Krishna. I mean, one of the biggies. Totally became a drooling idiot. Going after this Mohini Murti. And finally, when Krishna had taken him around and was like just running just a little bit ahead of him, and he just couldn't quite ever get her, he finally stopped and he turned around, Krishna turns around as Mohini, lets Shiva regain his senses, and then Shiva realized, oh my goodness, wow, I can't believe that you did that to me. Right in front of his wife, too. The wife really was feeling bad. Her head is just hung down. So this was an example of, here's another term we'll talk about, Maya. Has anybody ever heard that term? Maya means illusion. And that in the material world where we are is basically what happens to us. We fall under the spell of Maya, or illusion. We start identifying with these bodies. And we forget our true nature, which is the spirit soul inside. And so this was an example of if Krishna can do this to this really, really powerful, Shiva the destroyer. At the end of time, Shiva's right there, fire and brimstone coming down. It's like, what chance? We don't stand a chance against this kind of power, and we're very much in illusion. So that's a nice example, letting us know that just the power of Krishna in that regard. And I'm just looking, it says connect to the Wi-Fi network, which I don't have connected here. But luckily, I don't think I need it, except for this one right here. And it's up. Good. I'm glad I left them up. So, which brings me to, okay, when I transitioned, let me get back to me for a little bit, because I got very involved in the temple in 1987. Again, in fact, I can show you that too. I might as well. I'm showing you everything else, right? Pretty honest person. This was me at the temple in 1988. Okay? But that wasn't me. It never felt completely, I never felt completely comfortable as Bhakta Steve, which was, Bhakta means new devotee. Steve obviously was my name. And so I left. I'm an old rock and roll chick. I mean, I played in rock bands, and it's like, wow, this is too radical for me. I'm used to the, sex and drugs and rock and roll type thing. And here I am living in a temple and chanting rounds and, not drinking and not smoking and all this stuff. And it was too much for me. So I left. And I was away from the temple for many, many, many years. I would go occasionally to see my friends, to see Dira, to see the temple president. At the time, his name was Bonaventure. He's still a really good friend of mine. But I didn't chant because I felt very strongly about it. It's like, if I couldn't do it 100%, I wasn't going to do it at all because I really respected the devotees who were doing it. Because Krishna consciousness is not, it's not classified as a religion, although a lot of people might think it is. It's actually just a spiritual way of life. It gives you the basic groundwork to live a spiritual life. And I respected the devotees who were doing it so much that I just didn't do anything. Because I said, I'm not going to cheapen it. Which is the completely wrong attitude to have. Because anything that you do spiritually is better than not doing anything. But I was such an idiot that I didn't do anything. But I would go visit occasionally. And then I started my transition. Now, in Krishna consciousness, if you ever go to a Hare Krishna temple, if you ever hear a lecture, the odds are that somebody is going to say to you, the first rule of Krishna consciousness, or the first lesson of Krishna consciousness is, you are not the body, you're the spirit soul. And then I'm thinking to myself, I'm transsexual. It's all about changing the body to match what's going on in my mind. So I guess that kind of disqualifies me from ever being a devotee. Which kind of bummed me out a little bit because though I wasn't really planning on being a full-time devotee, I did like going to the temple, and I figured, well, now I can't even go to the temple, because they'll probably throw me out or whatever. So I didn't go to the temple for a very long time, about 7 years or so. And after I got out of a relationship, and which I wanted out of, and I had my life exactly the way I wanted it, I found out that I was incredibly miserable. I mean, I had a good job, and I had a good home, and I had good friends. I'd reestablished all my friendships after I had my surgery. Everything was great. I had surgery in '98, so I'm an old timer. Okay? And I was miserable. And I was like, when was I happy? And when I really started thinking about it, it was when I was spending time at the temple. And so for the first time in over 20 years, 21 years, I carried them around with me in my purse everywhere I went for 21 years, my beads that were given to me by Dira. Not these beads, but my first set of chanting beads, japa beads. And I pulled them out and I started chanting a little bit. Now you have to remember, old rock and roll chick, I was smoking, I was drinking, I was doing the other stuff. But I would chant a couple of rounds a day. And weekends, though, I wouldn't do that because that was my time. I was going to drink. And so I would get a big bottle on Friday night and I would drink until Sunday afternoon and then sober up, hopefully, in time to go back to work on Monday. And I was really becoming a mess, to be perfectly honest with you. And my good friend Celia can verify that because I would call her just drunk off my butt, many, many times. I don't even remember the calls. And she says that, she couldn't even understand me half the time. So it was bad. So, which brought me to the point where finally I said, I got to do something. And so I started going back to the temple a little bit more. And I didn't know if I would be accepted or not. And I was, to some extent. Now, I don't want you to think that every Hare Krishna devotee at the Atlanta temple, Nupani Haridam, oh, great, you're transsexual? Fantastic, come on in. Because just like anywhere, there are people with very closed minds, very conservative, the way they're brought up, the way they're taught. So I didn't have, the vast majority were very, very welcoming. But there were some that were not. And one in particular, I had gotten very close to this family, and the father of the family, when he found out, was not happy. And basically barred me from seeing the family. And it really hurt me very, very deeply, to the point where I was ready to stop going to the temple. And I spoke to my friend Bonaventure, who had been the temple president for so many years. And he said, no. He said, you are not going to stop coming to this temple because of somebody's ignorance. You are not going to stop serving the deities. You are not going to stop serving your guru. And I said, what am I supposed to do? I said, this is too painful. He said, I want you to grab the Srimad Bhagavatam, go to the 9th canto, 1st chapter, 33rd text. And I want you to read that. And I said, why? He said, just do it. This is the Srimad Bhagavatam, 9th canto, first chapter, 33rd text. I won't bother with the Sanskrit. Let me give you a little background. Shiva, again, with his wife, is in the woods. There was a king, Sudyumna, and the king was out basically like on a hunting expedition with his friends, and they come into these woods, and they saw Parvati, Shiva's wife, in a state of undress, and she became very embarrassed. Shiva turned them all into women so she wouldn't be embarrassed, okay? There's another great example of gender change. I don't want my wife embarrassed, boom, and you're women. So, and the king and them, they're looking at each other, and they have no idea what's going on, you know? So anyway, so this is at the end of that pastime. Since that time, no male had entered that forest, but now King Sudyumna, having been transformed into a female, began to walk with his associates from one forest to another. The purport, the beauty of Srila Prabhupada, who I mentioned, who brought this knowledge, is that when he translated these books, he never gave his own interpretation. He would base everything that he said on other Vedic scriptures. So that's why if you ever read his version of the Bhagavad Gita, it's called Bhagavad Gita as it is, because he doesn't put any personal interpretation into describing, the verses. In the purport, it says, and there's a Sanskrit verse, in the Bhagavad Gita, it's chapter 2, text 22, it says, as a person puts on new garments, giving up old ones, the soul accepts new material bodies, giving up the old and useless ones. And that goes back to the reincarnation thing, because if you think about it, when you were a child, when you were a 2-3-year-old kid, where's that body? It's gone. I mean, you can't go back there, but you're still in that body, but that body is gone. And then in another 20, 30 years, this body's going to be gone, and it's going to be something else. And then finally you get to the end, the body can't go on anymore. The soul has to go somewhere else. If you don't go to the spiritual world, you go to another body. So it's just like giving up garments. So Srila Prabhupada says the body is just like a dress. And here, this is proved. Sudyumna and his associates were all male, which means that their souls were covered by male dress, but now they became female, which means that their dress was changed. The soul, however, remains the same. It is said that and this is the part that my mouth went, it is said that by modern medical treatment, a male can be transformed into a female and a female into a male. The body, however, has no connection with the soul. The body can be changed either in this life or the next. Therefore, one who has knowledge of the soul and how the soul transmigrates from one body to another does not pay any attention to the body, which is nothing but a covering dress. Such a person sees the soul, which is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, he is a learned person. And I was like, oh my God, Srila Prabhupada mentions transsexuals and transgender people in a purport in the Srimad Bhagavatam? This is amazing. So, I started thinking though, okay, well, where again does that leave us? If we're actually the soul and not the body, then why bother doing all these changes that we do to the body? And it brought me back to a conversation I had when I started doing my transition with a very, very, very wonderful senior devotee. His name was Matareshwari Das. And I told him what was going on. I went back to school after many years. I was like 33 or so, and I was at the University of Georgia. And I was just beginning my transition. It was before hormones, but I was just starting to even dress again after many 12 years or so. And I called him up one day because I respected him very much, and I told him what was going on. And what he said completely blew my mind because I was not expecting it. Because I remember the first lesson in Krishna consciousness. Remember? I said it a little while ago. What was the first lesson? You're not the body, you're the spirit soul. And I expected him to say, why are you doing this? You're spirit soul, this is nonsense. No. What he said to me was, if you're doing this just to get another body, to enjoy sense gratification, then it's a waste of time. If you're doing this to free the conflict that is in your mind, by all means, it is the right thing to do. That one took a little while to sink in. I think I hung up the phone and sat there for about 45 minutes. Now, understand, idiot that I am, I had surgery and then certainly tried to enjoy sense gratification with my new body, okay? But eventually I got to the point where I was, in 2009, miserable after having two bodies to enjoy sense gratification in, and realized that obviously this is not working for me. And so what do I do? And that's when I came back to what I had learned and then learned more about, which was Krishna consciousness. And it gave me a sense of understanding why I am transsexual. It gave me an understanding of why it was cool to go ahead and do my change, to do my transition, because I had such conflict. I couldn't, when you saw Bhakta Steve in the picture, I couldn't concentrate on being a devotee, because I would look in the mirror and that wasn't even my body. I mean, that wasn't even me. So it gave me I remember the first time I wore a sari to the temple. I bought a sari on Krishna.com. And if you ever want any cool Indian clothes, Krishna.com. Free plug for you guys at Krishna.com. And I get the sari, and it's in a box. This is the first time I've ever seen a sari up close, right? And I realized it's 7 yards of fabric, just one sheet, you know, and I'm supposed to make it into this beautiful thing that wraps, it's like, put it in the box, pushed it to the side of the room, and it stayed there for like 2.5 months. And my father's like, well, I spent the money on this thing, I've got to do something, what am I going to do? So I actually started watching YouTube videos to learn how to put on a sari. And I didn't have anyone to help me. I mean, I didn't really, at the time, I wasn't really going to the temple that regularly, so I did the best I could and I fought with it. Will it be appropriate for me to wear a sari in front of the deities? Because I still was kind of iffy about the whole, even though Matureshwari had said that, I didn't know how I was going to be accepted by the devotees at the temple. So I called Balabhadra, who I've known for so many years. And Balabhadra Prabhu, if I wear a sari in front of the deities, will it be offensive? And I got a typical male response, I'm sorry. That's between you and the deities. Thank you so much, okay? So I put on the sari the best that I could, looking at the mirror, realizing that, well, this doesn't really look like that lady on YouTube, but I think I'm going to give it a go anyway. And I go down to the temple, and I saw some people that I knew from the Bhakta Steve days. And they happened to be very, very accepting. Balabhadra's wife was one of them. There was this wonderful, wonderful older devotee, Mother Sachi Sundari from Nepal. She was like in her late 70s, early 80s maybe. And Balabhadra's wife, Gandhari is her name, said, Sundari, come here. Do you know who this is? And she looks at me, because she had known me from 1987 and 88, right? Now it's 2009. I know this face. And she said, that's Bhakta Steve. And this old Nepalese woman goes, well, how about that? So it was a nice experience. First time, but when I first stood in front of the deities, in front of Srimati Radharani, it felt so right in a sari. It was like, this is it. I can do this now. I knew I could do it. Well, maybe I wasn't 100% sure I could do it, but I was like, I can at least give it a shot now. And then I started coming a little more regularly, and happened to meet that young woman right there. And I won't go into a whole lot of details because it'll embarrass her greatly, but she was 16 years old when I met her. I was 47, and we immediately became best friends. I mean, just immediately. And she taught me so much in that first year. She inspired me to contact my guru, I had contact with in 1988, and then I had no contact for 20 plus years. She inspired me to ask him for another chance, which he had no reason to give me, because what's going to stop me from just leaving again? But through her urging and nagging that particular night, I did, and he said yes. And so ultimately, because of my friend Poonam, I really got serious about Krishna consciousness. I want to tell you how special she is. I'll embarrass you just a little bit. Within 3 weeks of meeting her, I stopped drinking, I stopped smoking, I was chanting 16 rounds a day. To put that in perspective, it's about 2 hours and 45 minutes of chanting a day, and I've been doing it ever since. And that's from her influence and her help, and I thank her every day. So in Krishna consciousness, in the Vedas, we have these examples where Krishna changes from male to female. Arjuna changes from male to female in order to enjoy some of the pastimes of Krishna that he normally reserves for his female friends. We see how Krishna, can deceive Shiva, and then we also see Srila Prabhupada talking about changing garments, and even mentioning through medical science a male can become a female or a female can become a male, and I just love that. So, why do this seminar? The reason I did this seminar, wanted to do this seminar, is that being in the transgender community since my first Southern Comfort was 1996, I've spoken to a lot of people, and there's an awful lot of folks who get really sick and tired of hearing, oh my God, you're going to go to hell. I can't believe that you're doing that. God made you a man, God made you a woman, you're changing this, this is not God, you're going to go to hell. I've been told I'm going to hell so many times. I've got to have a big condo down there, but it's got to be just waiting for me, according to these folks. And of course, a lot of people get really sick of hearing that. And so they just say, screw this, screw religion, screw spirituality, screw everything. And they become very, very bitter and atheistic, and which is their right if they want to do that, but I found it very sad because they weren't always that way. A lot of these people that I've spoken to were very, very spiritual or very religious, but because of their being transgendered in whatever way, shape, or form, whether it be transsexual, cross-dresser, whatever, they got so sick of hearing the bad stuff that they just turned their back on it. And I thought that was really sad. So I thought, if I can at least show that, hey, you don't have to accept everything I said as being true. Krishna came and he stole this nectar from demons and gave it to demigods. I'm not asking you to buy everything. Because I believe it doesn't mean you have to believe it. But the fact that there are scriptures, the oldest holy scriptures known on this planet, referencing us, transgender people, I find that incredibly validating. And that's why I wanted to kind of share that with you guys, so that you could see that, yeah, we're here, we're represented. And the ultimate goal is to realize that once we get the way that we want to get, we'll find out eventually that even though we're in these bodies that we work so hard to get, you're not going to find true happiness. You can't, really, in the material world. Not going to say you can't find any happiness. You can find some happiness, but it's temporary. Everything is temporary. You can go out and have a great night, but it's temporary. You can go out drinking with your friends, and I did it thousands of times, and have a really good night, and the next day feel like crap. It's all temporary, whatever it is. Love, relationships end, So the only thing for me that worked was turning to the spiritual side and trying to focus on the fact that we are the spirit soul. And now that I have this body that I want, that battle is over and done with, and I can focus more on what's inside and try to take away some of that maya, that illusion that has me so attached to this body, and realize that I really am that spirit soul that hopefully gets back to the spiritual world so that I can have those pastimes with Krishna again. Because we were all there at one time. Now we're here. The object is to get back up there. So I'm going to stop here, and if anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Yeah?
Stephanie, I think you were going to tell us the story of how you got the name Shanti.
I was. Thank you for I told you I tangent off, and I totally forget that. Okay. as I mentioned, when I first came into the temple and I saw the three altars, it's Jagannath, Baladev, Subhadra, Chaitanya, Nityananda, Krishna, and Radharani. I was so attracted to Radharani. I've always been so attracted to Radharani. And everybody knew that knew me at the temple. In fact, I mean, I could just stare at Radharani, you know. In fact, I felt guilty sometimes because it's like I'm not paying enough attention to the other deities. These are all forms of God, and here I am just looking at Srimati Radharani. But that's it. Different people are really attracted to different forms of the Lord. And of course, this being Krishna's pleasure potency, and me always being attracted to women anyway, you know, it's like, you know, here I am attracted to Srimati Radharani. So, when it came time that I was able to take initiation, and it's a big, long process. I mean, you go through a process. First you take what's called shelter. And shelter means that you've been chanting 16 rounds a day, and we have four, as a Hare Krishna devotee, we have four regulative principles. I mentioned before that there are four pillars of spiritual life. If you think of them as a table, you have cleanliness, you have honesty, you have austerity, and you have truthfulness. And to go with those, to make those legs of the table, for cleanliness, it's no illicit sex. For compassion, it's no meat eating. We don't eat eggs, onion, mushroom, garlic. There's other reasons, but I don't need to go into. I will if you ask me, but I mean, for truthfulness, there's no gambling. For, what am I leaving out, Bruno? For austerity, there's no intoxication, which means we don't even do caffeine, with the exception of the occasional bit of chocolate that we'll have. That's kind of a gray area that goes on in ISKCON. So you have these four principles, and if you take any one of those away, again, think of a table, it's not very sturdy, because if you put too much weight on one side where you don't have the leg, boom, you're coming over. So we try to follow those four principles, and then we chant. We call them the four don'ts and a do. So in shelter, you have to have been chanting for at least 6 months and following the regulative principles. And, you know, the guru that you approach, he checks with the temple president and the people at the temples. Well, is this person really attending temple? Are they being involved? To the best of your knowledge, are they actually following these principles? And then you have to go at least another 6 months of doing that before you are even eligible to try for initiation. Now they've even added more stuff to it. You have to take all these courses and everything. So the whole idea of the brainwashing thing is so ridiculous, because you have to learn so much and study so much just to qualify to take initiation. That, yeah, brainwash? No, it doesn't work that way. So, and my guru calls that period when you're under shelter, he calls it like the engagement period. Because it's my responsibility as a person who is an aspiring disciple of this guru to check him out. You know, we have these computers now. There are DVDs of his lectures. I can go on, I can watch YouTube lectures, I can watch DVD, I can listen to audio files. Is this really the person that I want to give my life to and serve, you know, be a disciple of this person who was a disciple of Srila Prabhupada, who was a disciple? There's a big long line, that Gaudiya Vaishnava Sempradaya, which goes all the way back to Krishna. So it's my responsibility to listen and be sure that this is the person that I want to give my life to. His responsibility is to check with the temple to make sure, because there's a very, very special bond that comes between a disciple and a guru, and he doesn't want somebody who's not following the regulative principles or chanting, because not only does that person get a bad reaction, but he'll have to take a bad reaction as well. So it's a very, very serious thing that we do. After that 1 year period at least, and in my case it was 1.5 years, because my guru, who actually was originally born in Wisconsin, he lives in Mayapur. He's been over there for more than 40 years in Mayapur, India. He only comes to Atlanta every so often. And so it was 1.5 years when I finally was there, when I had to take the test, and you have to answer, you have to go through a verbal assault, not an assault, but they check, and you have things that you have to know. And it's kind of scary. And now I had a year and a half, old rock and roll chick. Am I really going to be able to live the rest of my life not drinking? I have a couple of friends here, Celia, Celie, 3 friends, and Amy, who have known me for a long time. They know how I used to party. Okay? I could throw it back. Am I really going to be able to not ever do that again? At least with alcohol. I still like to throw back, but just not with alcohol, okay? Cigarettes, I mean, I smoked for 30 years. Am I going to be able to really not do that? Never have a joint again, you know? Never have sex again? Am I going to be able to do this? There's a picture of me on Facebook. I wish I could pull that up for you to see. You will never in your life see a more serious look on my face as when I am kneeling in front of my guru to get these beads right here that he hands you. That's when he gives you the name. You'll never see a more serious look on my face as that picture that was taken. I look almost scared to death. Because even up to the point that he's putting the beads in my hand, it's like, am I really going to be able to do this? Am I really going to... It's not unlike, for those of you who are not that familiar with taking a shit, not unlike a nun's vows or a monk or something like this, you know? So the time came, and I went through the test and everything, I passed. And I was like, wow, this is really going to happen. So it was really amazing. Celie was there. Poonam was there. I had some other friends who were there, not devotees, but they came to support me because they knew, they saw the difference in me over the past year and a half. They were like, my God, whatever you're doing, keep doing it because you're happy. You know, you're happy. So I said, all right. So I go and I get on my knees in front of my guru. And there's a big thing where he says, you know, do you vow to chant at least 16 rounds a day? Yes, Guru Maharaj. Do you vow to follow the 4 regular principles? Please name them. And I have to say, no meat eating, including eggs, onion, mushroom, garlic, no illicit sex, no gambling, and no intoxication. Okay. Do you vow that you will help me spread Srila Prabhupada's message of Krishna consciousness around the world? Yes, Guru Maharaj. And then he takes the beads, which he's chanted on, and he goes to hand him, and he says, your spiritual name is, and I heard, and I was kind of in a fog anyway, so I take my beads, and he says, now go and pay obeisances to Srila Prabhupada. We have a statue, a murti of Srila Prabhupada in the temple, and you pay your respects. Well, then there's a guy with a microphone so that the entire congregation can hear. The temple was full. And this is what I heard as I'm walking back to pay obeisances to Srila Prabhupada. He says, so I go and I pay my obeisances to Srila Prabhupada. I go back and I have a seat where I was sitting. And I have no idea what my name is, okay? So there was this wonderful devotee, Mother Rati, who's sitting near me. And she leans over and she says, it's a beautiful name. And I went, oh, you heard it? Would you please mind telling me what it is? And so she says, Shanti Keshavi Devi Dasi. Do you know what it means? And I said, I have no clue. So she says, Shanti means peaceful. Keshavi, Krishna has many, many names. I mean, if you're Christian, Krishna is known as Yahweh, Jehovah. If you're Muslim, he's known as Allah. Yeah, there's just millions of names. And in the Vedas, he's got so many different names. And one of those names is Keshava. His name is Keshava, which means the master of the senses. Keshavi, again, Krishna is never without Radharani. Keshavi is another name for Radharani. So you got peaceful, you have Radharani. The Devi Dasi part means the servant of. So without my ever having said anything to my guru, and there is a place on the form that you fill out, is there a particular name from a particular pastime of Krishna that you would like Guru Maharaj to consider for you? And I looked at that and I went, who am I to tell my Guru Maharaj what to name me? And I wrote, no, please, Guru Maharaj, you choose. So without my ever having said anything, the name he gave me was the peaceful servant of Radharani. So that's how I got Shanti Keshavi Devi Dasi.
That's wonderful.
And I love it. I love that name. So most people call me Shanti, but as I was telling Joya that when I introduce myself, I have to say the whole thing, because one night we were in front of my guru, and everybody was going around just introducing themselves for the sake of the other people who were there. And when it got to me, I said Shanti Keshavi, and my Guru Maharaj said Devi Dasi. So it's like, yes, Guru Maharaj, I'm sorry. So I got a little chastising. So, any other questions? That's how I got to be Shanti Keshavi. Everybody good?
Devi Dasi.
You just did it.
Yeah, that's how I got to be Shanti Keshavi Devi Dasi. Sorry, Guru Maharaj. Okay. Okay, so if there's nothing else, thank you all for coming. I appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed it and learned a little bit. And as we always say, Hare Krishna.